Alrighty, so today we are going to be talking about Guilty Gear Strive Season 3. We just got a bunch of information after the Evo showing that we got this weekend, and I thought it'd be fun if we went through and analyze all the footage that we got and, discuss the information that we know about Season 3 so far. When it comes to this, we're mostly going to be speculating on things, so a lot of the things we're going to be talking about are not necessarily certain. We're just going to be trying to take the information that we've been able to glean from what they've shown us and try to draw some conclusions that seem likely. So yeah, for general impressions of Season 3 so far, I think it is looking very exciting, and I think it's the shakeup that people have been really wanting for Strive for a little while now, which I'm really looking forward to, because I think what we really need is a patch that really changes the game and takes a while to figure out. And I'm hoping with all the new mechanics and all the new moves they're adding, that's what we're finally getting here. So I am very excited. So with that all said, let's watch this footage that we got from Evo and kind of break down some of the things that they show here. So the first thing that they talk about with this major battle update is going to be new special moves. So the first thing I guess we can talk about is what they mentioned here at the bottom. Let me move my face out of the way real quick. So they mentioned that they're adding to the 6 of the 15 initial characters, they are getting new special moves. So we're getting 6 new special moves to start off Season 3. The thing I think is interesting about this is that Arceus actually had a dev panel on, I believe it was Saturday, where they were taking questions from people at Evo. And one of the questions they asked was about, kind of their update structure in regards to what they're going to be doing with Season 3, and they mentioned that they would like to be able to change the game maybe more frequently or based on fan feedback. Like when people are feeling frustrated with certain elements of the game or feeling bored with elements of the game, they want to be able to shake things up for people more frequently if that's what people want. And when they say more characters to come in later updates, I'm assuming, and it's kind of other things I've seen people echoing as well, when we get new DLC characters, or like we get the second DLC character Season 3, they'll add new moves to some more of the base roster as well. Because I do think a problem that Strife has had throughout its lifespan is very often we're left on the same version for a while, and something that kind of happens with that as well, and they also mentioned this, is that they release like a new character or something, and then they're not actually able to update that character for a long period of time. That's exactly what happened with Sin and Bedman, 2 characters that released in less than desirable states and have been left in that situation for a very long time now. So I think that's another benefit to this type of structure, is that they can do some smaller updates to characters that maybe need something done to them, either small buffs or small nerfs. Okay, so anyways, for the first new special move we have May's new dolphin special move. So she now has this ability to like jump off the dolphin, and I'm assuming that this is just a follow-up to dolphin. So like you do S dolphin, for example, and then you can maybe hit up on the stick or press a button or something, and then she jumps off of it. I don't think this is actually a new version of dolphin. I thought that maybe at first that you had to do this before inputting dolphin, but I think it's just like a follow-up that they're giving her to dolphin. Something I was expecting with these new special moves that they're adding was that I figured they would give characters new tools or like give them new directions with their moveset. But what it actually seems like they're doing is they're looking at the characters and they're doing the most Guilty Gear thing possible, where they're like, we want this character to do this 1 or 2 things really well. So instead of giving May a new direction and maybe, a new layer to what she can do as a character, they're going in on the dolphin idea for the character. Now they're giving her this jump cancelable dolphin, essentially. Now for the move itself, I don't actually know how good it's going to be. A lot of people are rightfully terrified of this move because, it's May. She's one of the best characters in the game right now, and dolphin is one of the most terrifying moves to deal with. I don't think this move is actually going to be that problematic, at least for what they're showing here. So in this example, they're showing Milia trying to 6P the dolphin, and then May just jumps off and then whiff punishes the 6P. That obviously can come up, but I don't think that's going to happen that often, especially against like S dolphin. S dolphin, you don't react to it with 6P, you just guess, right? And a lot of the times, I feel like there's a lot of moves you can try to check dolphin with, and then if you end up whiffing because she jumps over it, you could try to anti-air her anyways. But it does give May another angle of attack, right? It does give her another thing she can do, and she is currently a very linear character. She's strong, don't get me wrong, but she is a very linear character. Giving her another avenue that she could strike from, I think, is pretty valuable for her. And of course, we don't know what applications it's going to have as like a block string tool or an Oki tool or a combo tool, whatever it may be. It does seem that like whenever she comes out of it, she has air action. So here she does her J2H. So I'm assuming she could double jump, she could air dash, she could press any of her other air normals if she wanted to. So I think it'll be a good move, but I don't think it's going to be like the craziest thing. And also keep in mind, this is very important while we're talking about these moves. We don't know what the patch notes are yet. We don't know what character changes they're making beyond just, some of the new special moves and system mechanics. Right now, we're just speculating based on what we know. But I'm assuming with all of these new specials and all these new mechanics and all of that, we're probably getting relatively impactful character changes alongside it, because how some things work currently feel like they would be pretty overtuned relative to some of the new things that they're adding. Now, as for the next special move, they show off Faust. And once again, we have the most guiltier way of giving a character a new special move. When I was thinking about a new Faust special, I was thinking, you know, maybe they'll give him a block string tool or something, because right now he really struggles with characters who just dash block at him, characters that have good approach tools. He doesn't have good frame trap special moves, right? All of his specials that you would use as frame traps are pretty risky with like Scalpel and Mix and all of that. But instead of that, they're just like, what if we made him throw items better? So what they did for Faust is he can eat the item that he pulls out. And I'm guessing the way that this is done is that you input item toss, so you do, I think it's 214p, and then while you're doing that, you probably can press another button or hold the button down or something and just eat the item instead and save it for later. If they actually make him better at getting items out, I could see this being pretty valuable, because Faust has never had a way to store his items. This essentially gives him a kind of predictability element to his items that he's never had before, because they've always been random. There's a lot of details we don't know about this move, obviously. Like, we don't really know how do the moves function when they come out the second time you use them. In this case, we see the hammer just come out and it works as hammer normally does, but maybe it makes some other items function differently. We don't know how this works with like item super, for example. I also don't know, can you like store an item? Like, can I store hammer and then throw another item and then keep hammer as like a storage item? I don't know if you can do that. I'm assuming you can. I'm assuming you are forced to throw this item next. You can just delay when it comes out, but who knows? The thing is, I will say, if Faust doesn't get significant changes elsewhere, I don't feel like this is the type of change that like greatly impacts the character, because it is already, or it's adding something to the character that was already good and not really what he struggled with. So I think this move is going to really depend on what they change about the character to begin with. Or if you can replace an item without throwing it, that is also a good question. Like I said, there's a lot of things about this move in particular that we don't really know. It's also technically a combo tool, because if you look at this, he ends up throwing the item pretty fast. Like, the startup of that is very quick. So you could maybe use this even in combos as like a combo extender sometimes, depending on what item you have stored and what type of hit you got. It is one of those Faust things where it's a very situational thing, right? Faust is a character that is very much about kind of going with the flow and making the most out of what item you got and doing the best you can with it. So it's pretty fitting in that regard. Okay, so moving on from Faust, next we have our girl Ramlethal. So obviously I'm going to have more speculation and more questions when it comes to this character, because I play Ram. First off, I don't know much about Guilty Gear story, okay? I don't really follow the story or any of that. But I definitely was not aware that Ram is an earthbender. Is that canon? Is that something that I should have known? Because this is such a random type of move for her to have. I thought they'd give her another move that uses her swords as a resource or something like that, or maybe one of her extra moves. They just made her an earthbender. So I'm here for it, don't get me wrong. I'm about it, it's cool. I just was not expecting that. This is definitely a 2-2 input. Yeah, I think this is probably a 2-2 input. It's probably a 2-2H. We don't know if she has like two versions of this. Maybe she has one that goes closer, maybe she has one that goes farther. Maybe it tracks the opponent, it just goes to wherever the opponent is. Obviously, we don't know. But in regards to this move and just kind of its applications of what it could do, obviously it's a full screen tool. You can use it when you're very far away from your opponent, which is an interesting thing to buff about Ram, because it seems like they're trying to buff her mid-screen presence again, which is her weaker area. I'm not saying she's weak mid-screen, but it is her weaker area. Giving her another tool to compensate for that is very different than the other tools are giving characters, because as I was mentioning, the other tools are trying to enhance things that the characters were already good at, whereas with Ram, they're trying to kind of fill a gap in an area that she doesn't currently cover, which is very interesting to me. So when it comes to the move itself, it has a vacuum effect on hit and block from what we've been able to gather, and it also seems to be quite plus. I've tried to count the frames on this. It seems like it's about +8 from what I have counted on it myself, which is very plus. Being +8 is like, you can literally do a true block string close slash if you're close enough, or a true block string K button if you want to. It does seem pretty slow though. If you actually watch the move, there is a lot of startup to it. I counted 32 frame startup. which is still faster than something like a Kai charged on edge, for example. Charged on edge, I think, is 39 frames, it's 32. It's still pretty fast, but it is slower. The opponent might be able to jump out of it. They might be able to instant air dash over it. They might be able to dash block past it or something. But I think the idea is that it gives her another way to kind of create mid-screen pressure. It gives her another way to disrupt characters that have like kind of two-step neutral, which is really funny because Ram already does well against those types of characters. So characters like Jacko, who wants to pull a minion in neutral, characters like Zato, who wants to summon Eddie, characters like Faust, who want to throw an item. It also possibly gives her another combo tool, because I'm assuming, well, I'm not even assuming, we've seen a screenshot where this move launches on hit. Yeah, so this is the screenshot showing what it looks like on hit. Obviously, this is a still image. We don't actually know how high it launches or anything, but clearly in this clip, Faust is airborne now, and it looks like he's getting launched. So I'm assuming what happens is it pops him up towards Ram, and then she can maybe link like a 5k or a 2k or something like that. So yeah, I think it looks like a pretty fun move, and it's going to make Ram have, you know, more depth to the things that she can do, especially mid-screen, which is an area that she is currently pretty dry in. So from just a fun perspective, I agree with it. And again, there's probably going to be balance changes that come alongside this, so I kind of predict they might nerf Ram's corner game, and in compensation, they gave her a new special move that enhances her mid-screen capabilities. And then lastly, of the new special moves they showed Anji doing this, whatever you want to call it. It looks kind of like an overhead. I don't think it's actually an overhead. Wait, that is a fish. He hits you with a fish. Wait, is Anji a waterbender? Wait, I didn't realize that, bro. What? Anyways, I don't know what type of move this is. I'm assuming it's not an overhead because it is way too fast to just be an overhead. I assumed it was a follow-up to spin. Do we not agree with that, chat? Do you not think that this is a follow-up to spin? Do you think that he's recovering here and just doing it? I'm pretty sure it's a follow-up. And again, going into that context of these new moves seem to be trying to mostly enhance what a character already does. This leans into Anji being like an RPS spin machine. There is sometimes with Anji where you spin a projectile or you spin like a far-reaching poke or something, and then you can't properly punish it, or maybe you spin the late active frames of a move and you can't properly punish something. And also gives him something that he can do after spinning a projectile, because that's what they show here. They show him spinning Gunflame and then having a seemingly invincible option, because it's going through Soul Far Slash, to beat the Far Slash. So I think they're just trying to make him have more threat after spinning something, especially a projectile. So yeah, that's it for the new special moves. And I think most of them are considerable inclusions. I think they're going to be pretty impactful for the characters. I feel like Rams and Anjis are more impactful than Mei's and Faust's, but that's just speculation, obviously. And there are still 2 other special moves that we haven't seen. With that said, we have to talk about the 2 new system mechanics that are coming to Guilty Gear Strive. First one being the new offensive mechanic, which is going to be Wild Assault, which is maybe the most terrifying thing that we could possibly see in this patch. Once again, let me move my face out of the way. So, Wild Assault, new offensive mechanic that requires 50% burst gauge. I'll get back to that in a second. Perform a lunging attack to the front, available to all characters. Properties vary depending on the character. So based on a IGN interview, which we're not going to watch it on stream because you don't really need to, but I'm just going to summarize some of the things they talk about. I will have a link to the description below if you're watching this on YouTube. You can watch the IGN interview yourself if you want to. But in that interview, they actually mentioned that there are going to be 3 different types of Wild Assaults, and each character kind of just gets assigned one. So we've seen blue Wild Assaults, we've seen red Wild Assaults, and we've seen white Wild Assaults. So based on what we've been able to glean from the trailer, we'll talk about it as we go through it. All 3 of them definitely have unique properties. Some of them seem like they're combo tools, some of them seem like they're kind of like blockchain tools. Some of them seem like they're neutral tools, stuff like that. We'll go through it as we talk about it. But first off, let's talk about the 50% burst gauge, because I think that is something that gets overlooked pretty often when people are talking about these mechanics right now. 50% burst gauge is not a lot, but it's also a lot at the same time. It's going to very much change how we look at burst gauge. In that same IGN interview I was just talking about, they mentioned that there is going to be a change to how burst regen works. They didn't mention what, they didn't say whether it was a buff or a nerf, they just said there's a change, and they also said that they're buffing burst in and of itself as a mechanic. Those 2 things, along the fact that we now have 2 system mechanics, this one and the next one we're going to be talking about, they all revolve around burst. We basically have a new resource in the game as far as I'm concerned. Burst obviously was in the game before, and you did have to manage it a little bit, but it was pretty linear how you managed it. Now there's a lot more to that mechanic that matters. And that changes everything about the game. That changes how you view, just certain matchups. It changes how you view even your tension gauge. Your tension gauge now has different value because you have another resource as well on top of it. you know, people are like, oh man, Wild Assault and Deflect Shield are going to be super strong and they're going to change every situation. They do cost 50 burst gauge. You're not always going to have 50 burst gauge in every situation, especially with possible changes that are coming. And even if you do, you're not always going to want to spend it. So in this clip, we have Nago doing Wild Assault, and he seems to have a white one. So you can see with the glyph back here, the glyph is a white color. In this example, he does it on block. He literally cancels his block string into it, and it is a guard crush move. So this guard crushes the opponent and puts you right next to them. The next one is Gold Lewis, also doing a white Wild Assault, and this one is going through Renson. Now, originally, people thought that this meant that maybe white Wild Assaults were projectile invincible. I can confirm to you that based on this screenshot, it is not projectile invincibility, it's just invincibility or armor, because as we see, Potemkin is clearly going through Nago's far slash in this clip. I'm assuming for some characters who maybe struggle to get in, so characters that are slower, characters like Pot and Gold Lewis, and I guess Nago, because he also has this, they get an invincible approach tool. This concerns me greatly, because it's also a launcher. Gold Lewis, definitely 100%. I don't need to play the game to tell you is comboing off of this. I don't know what he's doing. He can probably do whatever he wants, frankly. So based off our understanding, white Wild Assaults are invincible, advancing, guard-crushing launchers, which doesn't sound quite right. I feel like there's some information here that we lack, or there's like some properties about it that we don't get. Obviously, we don't know what frame it gets invincibility. We don't know, maybe it runs out of invincibility before it becomes active, something like that, you know? But they seem currently very, very strong. And for some of the characters, I could kind of see them giving this type of tool to them, like an approach tool for Gold Lewis or Pot. Kind of makes sense, right? I don't really know why Nago has it. We'll see what happens with that, but it seems highly concerning to me. This one, we see Happy Chaos doing his. He's canceling his far slash into it. And in the case of Happy Chaos, he has a blue Wild Assault. And on the hit, the thing that seems mainly different here is that his is special cancel. We don't see Nago or Gold Lewis special canceling theirs, but for Happy Chaos, he's actually able to cancel his into reload. And we also see, I believe Asuka has a blue Wild Assault. So I'm assuming characters that have resources to worry about. So characters like Asuka, Happy Chaos, Zato, things like that, Jacko. I'm assuming those characters have blue Wild Assaults because they want those characters to have either combo tools or ways to get their resources back on offense. So in the case of Happy Chaos, he is reloading his gun and then he's doing dust into a mix-up or whatever. We see Bridget doing hers here, and hers is also blue, and she's using it as a combo tool. And in the case of Bridget, so this is her Wild Salt attack, where she like has the yo-yos kind of swinging behind her. And then she cancels it into her 6H. So I don't think it's just special cancelable, I think it is just cancelable, period. So the blue ones seem like they are about combos and pressure. They're like ways for characters to mount their pressure or ways for them to extend combos. These ones seem really strong to me. Like just straight up, they seem like really strong tools to have. I think generally the characters that I'm expecting them to have these are really, really going to benefit from them, because let's just take a character like Chip or Ramlethal, right? Those characters use positive bonus very well, right? Those are characters that very much want to get positive bonus very quickly. And more importantly, they really like super wall breaks where they get their heart knocked down and then they kind of abuse their positive bonus with like a infinite block string, something like that. Imagine they get a hit mid-screen, and instead of needing to spend the Roman cancel to get wall break, what if you spend your Wild Assault and then you're able to extend your combo into a wall break with super instead? And then from that situation, you have a super wall break, you get your heart knocked down, you do your positive block string, you win the round. It doesn't even matter that you spent burst for it at that point, because you're getting your burst back during your offense, during your combo, that type of thing, right? Using burst offensively, to me, is almost always more beneficial than defensively, in the context that if you're using it offensively, you are killing time for you to regenerate that burst gauge back. For resource characters, like I mentioned, you know, Happy Chaos, he can spend more bullets and do more things in his offense, and then spend Wild Assault to get that resource back. A red Wild Assault, that is the one that we haven't really seen exact footage of what it does. We have this screenshot of her doing a red one. In this case, it's just a screenshot. We don't actually know what is different about it, but this is the only different color we've seen. Now, in the case of this, do we know that the colors are linked to what they do? We don't. We don't know if they're linked to it. I feel like it would make sense that they are. We don't know what's in common between all the characters that have these things. We're just making speculation and guesses on how they work. I feel like it is a fair assumption that the colors are linked to what they do, ultimately. So anyways, continuing on to the second new mechanic they're adding. which is going to be the new defensive mechanic, because of course you can't have an offensive mechanic without a defensive mechanic. This is going to be a Deflect Shield. So with Deflect Shield, this is another mechanic that costs 50% of your burst gauge. It says can block any attack, including overheads, lows, and projectiles available to all characters. This is essentially kind of a form of push block, but it's kind of a better version of push block than even traditional push block in other games. So obviously, yes, it has the pushback effect, right? You can push your opponent away from you, and this has all sorts of applications, right? You can cause your opponent to whiff a button in their offense and then whiff punish them for it. They show examples of that for a bunch of characters here. Most importantly, they show like Ino's 2K2D whiffing and then Viken whiff punishing her for trying to do it, which I think is going to be a very common application. Just like immediate uses of this type of move. Opponent does 2K2D, you can Deflect Shield their 2K and make their 2D whiff and then whiff punish it. Honestly, don't know how good for the game this is going to be. I do think having another defensive mechanic that works against high-low situations and stuff like that is good. The amount of variability that is presented to the game now because of this mechanic could either be good or bad. I think it has good sides and it has downsides as well. Because, you know, if your opponent has 50% burst, every time you do a block string, you have to worry about them doing Deflect Shield and then whiff punishing you. For some characters, it may be not that big a deal. Some characters don't have block strings that are likely to whiff. Some characters won't punish you as hard for you whiffing something like this, right? But other characters will. If Happy Chaos makes you whiff a button and then he whiff punishes you, that's a full combo. If Nago makes you whiff a button and then whiff punishes you, that's a full combo. So there's a lot of things that can kind of come up with this type of mechanic. And I think on one hand, variability like that is actually good for a fighting game because it presents more counterplay and it creates more situations where there are things players could do, which is exactly what you want in a game like Guilty Gear, which has a lot of linear situations. It is most likely a good thing, but I do see, you know, potential downsides. That is not the only part about this mechanic. In fact, I don't even think that's the important part about the mechanic. The important part of the mechanic is what they say right there. Can block any attack. Now, I'm going to bring something up, and I want the chat or people in YouTube comments to try to guess what it is that is important about this shot. Blocking a low while standing. Yes, it says that right there, including overheads and lows. It actually blocks high and low for you. This is potentially a big counterplay to kind of oaky or set play heavy characters with high-low mix-up, that type of thing. Those types of characters now have a direct form of counterplay. Now, obviously, it costs 50% of your burst. Again, it's not always going to be available. You're not always going to want to spend that 50% of your burst. The fact that you have anything at all is a game changer because very often in these situations, you're just holding it, dude. Curious to know if you had to be in a block stun to use Deflect Shield. My guess is that you do not. Just based on the wording of it, I feel like the idea for this mechanic is that it's supposed to be useful on Wake Up. You know, they want you to be able to diffuse high-low situations, first of all. And second of all, if you were able to use this, or rather, if you're not able to use this, if you're not in block stun, it actually opens up option selects, and I want to talk about that real quick. So there are all sorts of option selects that would possibly be at your disposal if they were to make it to where this mechanic does not come out if you're not in block stun. So first of all, one thing is if you hold two buttons down and you press the D button, nothing happens. And this mechanic is a quarter circle back plus the D button. So currently, with at least how the game works, you just be able to do this. And you would never do anything on whiff, and if you ended up blocking something, you would Deflect Shield it. There are other options like to come up with it, like just initially, quarter circle D, if you know, it didn't come out if you weren't blocking, would just give you throw. Like, you would just get throw for doing it. So if someone was like, I'm gonna, you know, run up to you on your Wake Up, and I'm gonna wait for you to do Deflect Shield or something, you would get thrown for it, or you'd have to backdash and bait the throw that way. Or they'd be able to option select it probably and input it as a 2D by doing 2-1-4 and then going back to down back. So 2-1-4-4, or sorry, 2-1-4-1. There we go. So something like this would OS 2D instead of throw. So going back to it, there's all sorts of questions that we still have to ask about this mechanic. Obviously, you know, we still don't know. Can you actually do it when you're not actually blocking? I think you probably can, but we don't know. Is the move punishable in any way? My guess is that it's not. I'm assuming there's no recovery, because if you look at the animation of the move, like, you're clearly blocking, and it clearly says that it blocks overheads and lows for you. So I'm assuming this is just a guaranteed use of your meter, which I honestly think that makes sense because it costs 50% of your burst gauge. I'm assuming this is just a guaranteed use of 50 meter It just costs 50% of your birth stage to use it. But again, that's just speculation. It looks like you might be able to throw it. You might be able to, yeah. I mean, we don't know. Obviously, again, like I just showed, you can probably option select a throw with the input. The input itself is actually an option select for throw. And that's basically it for what they showed for like system mechanics and new moves and stuff. I think it's all sounding very exciting, and I'm very much looking forward to labbing all of this very soon when this update comes out in about 2 weeks from now. Of course, for those of you over on YouTube, I want to know, what are your thoughts on the information that we have so far? Are you happy with the new moves that we're getting? Are you happy with the new mechanics? Are you planning on playing Johnny? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, dropping a like. Those things really help me out. They help the algorithm, so I'd greatly appreciate it. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.